The sun was setting, and its light made long shadows in Damien Sterling's big office. The glass walls showed the beautiful view of New York City, glowing in orange and gold. Damien, a 35-year-old man, stood still like a statue, looking at the city below. It was a city he helped build, a city full of tall buildings that showed how he had gone from being poor to becoming the most important boss in town. But today, Damien felt sad and lonely. He touched the cold glass of the window and thought about his life. 3 months ago, he had signed papers to end his marriage. Now, even his shiny, tall building with 92 floors felt empty, like it didn't mean much anymore. On his desk were papers from the morning newspaper. The headline said, "Sterling Empire in Trouble. CEO's personal life raises questions." Damien clenched his jaw. His beard twitched because he was so angry. He thought about Selena, his ex-wife. Just 3 weeks ago, she had said something very mean about him at a big party. She had held a fancy glass of champagne and said loudly, "A man who can't have children has no right to lead a family company." People gasped, and everyone started whispering about him. The next day, social media was full of gossip about Damien. People said terrible things, asking if he was a real man or if he could even do his job. Damien walked to his desk and picked up a silver photo frame. Inside was a picture of his parents, who had died in a car crash when he was 12. He remembered what his father always said, "A sterling man makes his own path. Don't let anyone see you cry." But today, Damien felt like crying. He had seen doctors in secret to find out why he couldn't have children. The doctors said it wasn't impossible, but it was very hard. He had kept this a secret, but somehow Selena found out. Now everyone was talking about it, and Damien felt ashamed. His assistant, Violet, called him through the intercom. "Mr. Sterling," she said carefully, "the board wants an emergency meeting tomorrow." The board was a group of people who helped run his company. "Okay," Damien said. "Set it for 9 a.m. and cancel my dinner with the Thompsons." The room was quiet, but it felt heavy, like the silence could crush him. Outside, the city lights began to sparkle, but tonight they didn't make Damien feel proud. They just reminded him how lonely he was. His phone buzzed. It was a text from his little sister, Lysandra. "Big brother, stop hiding and come to dinner," she wrote. He ignored it. He didn't want pity. He didn't want anyone to feel sorry for him. Damien walked to the bar in the corner of his office and poured some fancy old scotch. The golden drink shone in the last light of the day. His father used to say, "Sterling men face their problems," but Damien wasn't sure he could face this one. The company's stock, how much people thought the company was worth, had gone down a lot since Selena's public comments. Investors were worried, and his board members thought maybe he shouldn't be the boss anymore. Even his lawyer called to warn him about it. Damien felt so alone. He didn't have anyone to share his life with, no one to pass on his company to. He worked late into the night, trying to prepare for the board meeting. But deep down, he wondered if all his work would be enough. The next morning, rain poured from the sky, covering New York City in gray clouds. Damien sat in his fancy car, heading to the board meeting. It went exactly as he thought it would. The board members didn't say it outright, but they didn't trust him anymore. After the meeting, Damien's car stopped in front of his building. He stepped out into the rain without an umbrella. He didn't care if he got wet. Sometimes, he thought, you need the rain to wash away your sadness. When he walked into the building's lobby, something unexpected happened. Papers were flying everywhere. A woman was running around trying to grab them. The wind from the doors had scattered her work. She looked flustered but graceful, chasing the papers like a dancer. Damien stopped and watched her. She had skin that looked like shiny gold and curly hair sparkling with rain. She was tall and moved like she didn't care what anyone thought. "I'm so sorry," she said, laughing nervously as she tried to gather her papers. Damien bent down to help her. He picked up some papers and realized they were drawings of buildings. They were amazing, showing futuristic designs that looked like they belonged in nature. "Thank you," she said, taking the papers from him. "I must look like a mess." "You don't look like a mess," Damien said. "These drawings are incredible." She looked surprised, then smiled a smile so bright it could chase away any storm. "You know about architecture?" "I know when something is excellent," Damien said. He held out his hand. "I'm Damien Sterling." "Alara Rivers," she replied, shaking his hand. Her handshake was strong, even though she was dripping wet. "And yes, I know who you are, Mr. Sterling. Your work in building sustainable cities inspired these designs." She stood in front of Damien, dripping rainwater onto the shiny marble floor of his building. Her wet charcoal dress clung to her, but she stood tall like a queen. Though she looked soaked, her dress showed her style, not fancy labels. "You're here for the Anderson and Associates interview?" Damien asked. He noticed the folder she was holding. He knew the architecture company rented offices in his building. "I was here," Alara corrected him with a tiny smile. "Looking like a wet cat probably didn't help me get the job." Damien felt something strange in his chest. Maybe it was how she looked him in the eye, so honest and real. Maybe it was how much she clearly loved her work, even when things weren't going her way. Or maybe it was just her presence. It made the heavy sadness he'd been feeling lighten a bit. "They've missed out," Damien said firmly. "Would you like to show those designs to someone who actually has the vision to make them real?" Alara raised an eyebrow. "I'm sorry?" Damien smiled. "Sterling Industries," he said, "is always looking for fresh ideas. We need people who understand that buildings aren't just walls, they're spaces where people can live better lives." He pulled out a business card and handed it to her. "My private office, 2 hours from now. Unless, of course, you're planning to drip water on someone else's floor?" Alara laughed, warm and genuine. "Are you always this straightforward, Mr. Sterling?" "Only when I see potential worth pursuing," he replied, watching her closely. He noticed how the lobby lights made her skin glow faintly golden. 2 hours, he reminded her. "That should give you time to dry off, unless you want to stick with the wet cat look." "You're not going to let me forget that, are you?" she teased, taking his card. When her fingers brushed against his, Damien felt a spark. "Not likely, Miss Rivers." As she walked away, head high despite her damp clothes, Damien smiled for the first time in weeks. Watching her, he felt something fresh like sunlight breaking through a stormy sky. Hope. The next 3 weeks changed everything on the 90th floor of Sterling Tower. Alara filled the big conference room with her architectural models, each one showing her creative ideas. It was like a tiny city made of her dreams. Damien spent more and more time there, pretending to check on her work. Of course, people started whispering behind their backs. They said cruel things, calling her names like gold digger or saying Damien was having a midlife crisis. But Alara didn't let it bother her. One day, she stood in front of Sterling Industries' board of directors, a group of 12 powerful, skeptical people. Alara showed them her idea for a housing project that was not only eco-friendly, but also beautiful and smart. She explained how solar gardens could blend with community spaces and how water fountains could double as recycling systems. Building the future isn't about choosing between luxury and being environmentally friendly, she said. It's about redefining what luxury means for a conscious generation. Damien, sitting at the end of the table, felt proud. He'd known Alara was special, but this was even better than he'd imagined. She answered every tough question calmly and with perfect solutions. The board approved her project without a single no, a first in company history. Late nights became their thing. Together, they worked on designs while the city lights twinkled outside. Alara told Damien about her childhood in New Orleans, her dad, who taught architecture, and her mom, who painted jazz musicians. Her roots shaped her style, mixing old and new into something magical. You're different when you talk about buildings, she told him one evening as they stood by the giant windows. The sunset painted her skin in gold. It's like you see what they could mean to people, not just what they are. You're different when you design them, Damien replied, looking at how the light caught her curly hair. You see possibilities where others see problems. The air between them felt heavy, like something unspoken was waiting to be said. They felt it, that pull toward each other that wasn't just about work. But Damien held back, worried about the past and what others might think. Still, they kept working side by side. Alara amazed everyone with her passion. She charmed community leaders, solved tricky problems, and faced prejudice with strength and dignity. One rainy evening, she spoke softly. "They'll never stop talking," she said, referring to the rumors. "I'm too young, too black, too female for their comfort. And I'm too scandal-ridden," Damien added lightly, though he didn't feel it. "Too important to be spending time with someone like me," Alara corrected, meeting his eyes. "I know what they say, Damien, that I'm using you, that I'm here for the wrong reasons. What do you say to that?" he asked, stepping closer. "I say they don't know me," she said firmly. "Everything I've done, I've earned. Every idea, every design, it comes from my heart." In that moment, Damien realized how deeply he admired her, not just for her beauty or her talent, but for her spirit. She was strong, real, and unafraid to be herself. The whispers that still haunted the corporate halls made Alara's hand shake slightly as she reached up to fix Damien's bow tie. It was a simple but special gesture. "People will say I planned this from the start, that I seduced the hurt CEO," she said. "Your board members, your ex-wife, they'll say that." Damien stopped her from pulling away by holding her hand against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat under the smooth fabric of his suit. "Let them talk," he said. His name on her lips was like both a warning and a plea. "Your reputation, my reputation, it's already ruined. My reputation was lost the moment Selena turned my personal problems into public drama. But you," he gently touched her cheek, his thumb brushing her skin softly, "you've given me something I thought I'd lost forever." Alara's eyes filled with tears and she whispered, "What's that?" "Hope," Damien said. The word felt like a prayer between them. Hope that maybe the best parts of life weren't about building tall buildings or having a lot of money. Maybe they were about finding someone who sees you for who you really are and still chooses to stay. A single tear fell down Alara's cheek, meeting his thumb. "I never meant for this to happen," she said. "When I walked into your building that rainy day, I was just an architect with big dreams and wet shoes. I never meant to fall for you." Damien silenced her with a kiss. The world seemed to stop. At first, it was gentle, just a touch. But when Alara's arms wrapped around his neck and her fingers tangled in his hair, the kiss deepened. It was more than just a kiss. It was all the loneliness, pain, and growing feelings between them coming together. When they finally pulled apart, they were both out of breath. Alara spoke, her voice full of emotion. "I need you to be sure," she said, "because I can't do halfway. Not with this. Not with you. My heart can't love in small pieces." Damien pulled her closer, one hand on her back and the other tangled in her hair. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," he said. "You came into my life when everything was dark and you brought light to me. Not just to my projects or my company, but to me. Every day I wake up thinking about your smile. Every night I fall asleep remembering the sound of your laugh. You've become as important to me as breathing." "I promise," he said, wiping away her tears with his thumb. "I promise to stand by you against every whisper, every doubt, every obstacle. I promise to believe in your dreams the same way you've believed in mine. I promise to love you." She kissed him again, pouring all her emotions into it. When they pulled apart, she smiled. "I think that's a promise I want to help you keep." The night grew deeper around them as they stayed in each other's arms, sharing soft kisses and gentle words. The city below them continued to move on, unaware that something huge had changed above in the glass tower. Tell me about New Orleans, Damien whispered, his lips near her hair. Tell me about the little girl who dreamed of building beautiful things. Alara's laugh was soft. I used to follow my dad around his building sites, drawing buildings in my little notebook. He was an architect, but he loved to preserve the city's old buildings. And my mom, she painted jazz musicians in the French Quarter. She said every building has its own rhythm, its own music. Damien smiled, remembering how Alara described their sustainable housing project as a kind of music, with each part working together like a symphony. They must be wonderful people, he said softly. They taught me that love is the most important thing when you're building anything, whether it's a home, a job, or a life, Alara said. That's why I design the way I do, thinking about how spaces flow, how they make people feel, how they create their own music. Damien closed his eyes for a moment, overwhelmed by the idea of having a future with this amazing woman. I love you, he whispered. I know it's fast, and people might say we're crazy, but I love you, Alara Rivers, with everything I am. I love you too, Damien Sterling, with all my heart and soul, she said, her eyes shining with tears and joy. They stayed in the observation tower until dawn, wrapped in each other's arms. As the sky began to brighten with new hope, Damien felt sure that his life would never be the same. The man who had everything and then lost it all had found something far more precious than wealth or status. He had found true love. Little did they know this was just the beginning. Their love story, born in the rain and sealed in starlight, would take them on a journey neither could have imagined. But for now, they stayed in their perfect moment, swaying together in the warm sunlight as it rose, creating their own melody with heartbeats and whispered promises. It was the perfect moment, untouched by the world or anyone's expectations. Just two people who had found their missing pieces in each other's arms. Dance with me, Damien asked softly as the sun rose, holding out his hand. Without music, they swayed together in the soft light of dawn, making their own music with their hearts and promises. It was a perfect moment, and as the city below them began a new day, their love story was just beginning. 3 months later, they arrived at a beautiful estate by the beach, its glass walls reflecting the stars. Damien couldn't stop looking at Alara. She looked like moonlight in a beautiful silver dress. This was their first real getaway after keeping their relationship private in the city. You're so quiet, he said softly, holding her hand. Everything about this feels like a dream, Alara said, her eyes sparkling in the fading light. At the house, she was amazed by the beauty of the space. There were flowers everywhere, jasmine and gardenias that smelled like home. You remembered, she whispered, touching a flower. Early in their friendship, she had told him about how her father always brought her mother these flowers. I remember everything about you, Damien said, pulling her into his arms, every smile, every dream you've shared. They stood there, holding each other, as the sun faded and jazz music filled the air. It was soft and sweet, just like the clubs in New Orleans where Alara's parents had fallen in love. Dance with me, Damien whispered, his voice barely a sound. They swayed together in the dark, feeling the music in their hearts. The songs melted into each other, and the stars appeared in the sky beyond the windows. I never thought I'd find this, Alara said, her voice quiet against his chest. When I walked into Sterling Tower, soaked from the rain, I never imagined I was walking toward my destiny, she added. Damien held her tightly. You changed everything that day. When I saw you, it was like color returned to my world. They kissed again, and it quickly became more passionate. Slowly, Alara slid the strap of her dress off her shoulder and said, I love you. I love you too, Damien said, and they kissed again, both of them realizing that what they had was everything they had dreamed of. The night continued with love and laughter, and as midnight approached, they made love again, their connection deepening. Afterward, they stood on the balcony together, watching the moonlit waves. "We'll face everything together," Alara whispered. "Together? Always," Damien replied, pulling her close. They stood there, wrapped in each other's arms as the night wrapped them in its peace. Neither knew yet that this night had created something even more miraculous than they could have imagined. As dawn came, they knew one thing for sure: forever was waiting for them. They watched the sun rise over the Atlantic Ocean. The first rays of light touched their love, making everything glow. In the garden below, birds began to sing, and the breeze from the ocean promised new beginnings. Damien said with a sigh, "I should take you back to the city. The board meeting is coming up." But Alara stopped him with a kiss. "5 more minutes," she whispered. Damien smiled and pulled her closer. 5 more minutes, he agreed. The world outside could wait. Their love and this perfect moment mattered more. They stayed close, feeling each other's heartbeat while the sun rose higher and the waves kept moving in their usual rhythm. They didn't know yet, but something big was about to happen, something that would change their lives forever. But for now, they just had this moment. The breeze smelled of flowers and salt water, mixing with the sweet smell of Alara's perfume. Damien breathed it all in, remembering every detail: the way the sunlight made her skin glow, how her hair caught the light, how she fit so perfectly in his arms. "I love you," he said, because some things needed to be said over and over again. Her smile was as bright as the sun. "I love you too. Always." The day was waiting for them, full of responsibilities and work. But for now, they stayed in their own little world, letting love wrap around them like a warm hug. Their forever had just started. 6 weeks later, Alara stood in her private bathroom, staring at 3 pregnancy tests on the counter. Her hands shook as she checked her watch. It felt like those 3 minutes lasted forever. She had suspected something was different, feeling tired, dizzy, and not able to drink her usual coffee, but she thought it was just stress from work. But now, something was telling her to find out the truth. 2 minutes left. She looked at her reflection in the mirror, seeing a woman full of hope and fear at the same time. The bathroom, usually a place for quick fixes, had become a quiet space of possibility. When the timer went off, Alara looked down at the tests. All 3 were positive. The impossible had happened. She was going to have a baby, or maybe even 3. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Damien's voice called out with worry, "Alara, are you okay?" She opened the door, still with tears in her eyes. When he saw her, he stepped inside and asked, "Are they all positive?" Alara nodded. The joy on Damien's face was unbelievable. He picked her up in a big hug. "A baby," he whispered. "Our baby." They held each other, feeling like they were in a dream. But the doctor was waiting, so they had to go to her office. After a lot of tests, Dr. Harper Lee finally gave them the big news. "You're going to have triplets." Damien and Alara stared at the screen in amazement. 3 little heartbeats growing strong inside her. They were still in shock, but they knew they had to face the world. The next day, the news broke, and people started to talk. Some people said bad things, saying Alara had tricked Damien or was too young for him. Some people said bad things about Damien too, but none of it bothered Alara. She stood strong, feeling the babies kicking inside her. "What's important," she told Damien, "is what's in here," and she placed his hand over her belly. Later, Damien showed Alara a small velvet box. Inside were 3 tiny gold rings on delicate chains. "These are promise rings," he said, "one for each of our babies, a symbol that they were made in love and they will be born in love." Alara touched the rings, tears in her eyes, feeling grateful and loved. The next day, they attended a fancy event at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Alara was 5 months pregnant and looked beautiful in a dress that showed off her growing bump. She was glowing and full of confidence. Damien was so proud of her. She spoke with the mayor about their sustainable housing project, showing how it was helping communities. She even joked about their baby kicking inside her belly during the conversation, making everyone laugh. By the end of the night, everyone was admiring her, not whispering bad things anymore. She had proved that women could have it all: love, family, and a successful career on their own terms. Damien stood beside her, his hand on her back, always supporting her. They created a beautiful dance over time, always knowing what the other needed without talking. When she needed to sit down, he would gently lead her to a chair. When she wanted water instead of the drink in her glass, he would get it for her before she even asked. "Alara, your ex-wife is by the Egyptian sarcophagus," someone whispered. Alara saw Selena, who had platinum hair, standing with some investors. Damien calmly responded, "Let her watch. She can't touch what we have." Alara and Damien had grown stronger as a couple. Despite Selena's attempts to hurt them, everything they did together made people respect them more. Every time they appeared together, it made it clear that love, not hate, had power. Damien, once a famous bachelor, now showed how much he loved Alara, especially in public. The more they worked together on building homes for the future, the more people saw the truth. Love and hard work created the strongest foundations. The night of a special event came, and Damien was invited to speak. Instead of talking about the usual business stuff, he decided to speak from the heart. He looked at the ancient walls of the temple and said, "This temple has stood for thousands of years because its builders understood something very important. True strength comes from working with nature. Love is like that too. It builds, it lasts, and it changes things." He talked about how the world was changing, but how love is always strong. He spoke about Alara, his partner, and how she had changed his life. "She's shown me what real strength is," Damien said. "She carries our 3 babies and leads meetings with strength and grace. She doesn't just build buildings, she builds legacies of love." The room was so quiet. All eyes were on Damien and Alara, their love clear to everyone. He continued, "What we're building isn't just houses. It's futures, communities, and legacies of love that will last for generations." Damien's words brought tears to many eyes, even those who were known for being tough. After the speech, Damien went to Alara. They hugged in front of everyone, not caring about all the people watching them. That wasn't the speech we planned," she whispered. Damien smiled and said, "Some things are more important than a plan." They talked about their future together, about their 3 babies growing in Alara's belly. As they drove home that night, the city lights outside the window felt like they were part of a dream. But what mattered most wasn't the city lights or the big event. It was their family, the love they shared, and the babies that would soon be born. The next morning, Alara went into labor. Their 3 babies were ready to come into the world. The hospital room was calm, filled with soft music and fresh flowers. Alara was strong, holding Damien's hand as she went through the contractions. She smiled, even though she was in pain, and asked him to talk about the nursery they had prepared for the babies. Damien described the perfect room they had created. The walls were a soft mix of gold and pink, the cribs shaped like stars, and the chair was special, just like the one Alara's mother had used. They focused on the details of the nursery, helping Alara stay calm as the babies prepared to come into the world. After hours of waiting, the first baby was born, a strong boy. Damien held him and smiled, saying, "Orion." Then their daughter came next, Seraphina, her cries soft and musical. Finally, their second son was born, named Kai. Each baby was perfect, strong, and beautiful. Alara and Damien were overjoyed. "They're perfect," Alara whispered as she held them all. Damien kissed her and said, "Thank you for this gift." They sat there, surrounded by love, as their babies slept peacefully. Later, the hospital papers recorded the names and details of the triplets. The family was complete. Damien looked at his children and said, "I love you more than all the stars in the sky." Serafina gave a little sigh, and Orion and Kai snuggled closer. Their family was perfect. The world could wait for pictures and announcements. This moment was theirs alone. As they looked out the window, a shooting star passed by as if to celebrate their three miracles. At home, their penthouse had been turned into a safe place filled with love. The nursery was beautiful, and their babies were growing and sleeping peacefully. Damien had become a loving father even while working on his business. Alara smiled, watching the babies sleep. Damien hugged her and said, "The world needs to see that mothers and professionals can do both. We'll take the babies with us wherever we go." And when one of the babies whimpered, Alara quickly picked him up, soothing him in her arms. As his little cries turned into happy sounds, Damien whispered, "There's my thoughtful boy," gently rocking back and forth. He smiled as their baby Kai reached out to grab his finger with surprising strength. These quiet, loving moments made everything they went through feel worth it. They moved to the living room, where big windows showed a view of the city. The room had changed as their family grew, staying beautiful but making space for the babies. Soft play mats in light colors were ready for tummy time, and a hand-carved rocking chair from Alara's parents sat by the window. Damien smiled. "The Times wants to do a story about us," he said. "They're going to talk about how we've changed our company's policies to help parents." Alara nodded. "You're changing things, Damien," she said. "Not just buildings, but people's lives." Damien smiled back. "You showed me how it's possible. You've done so much, taking care of our three babies and helping change the way companies think about work and family." Their babies were quiet for now, but soon Orion and Serafina woke up. Damien got them, holding one baby in each arm. Alara smiled, her heart swelling with love as she watched him. "Good morning, my loves," Damien said as he sat back down with Alara. Orion started making happy baby sounds, and Serafina seemed to sing her own special song. "They're getting stronger every day," Damien said. "The doctor says they're growing ahead of schedule." "They're sterlings," Alara laughed. "Overachievers already." The sun shone in, lighting up their family and making the room feel warm and peaceful. Staff moved quietly in the background, getting ready for the day, but this moment was just for them, just for their family. "I have a surprise for you," Damien said after a while. When the babies were fed and happy, he pulled out a large envelope. Alara opened it, curious, and found architectural plans inside. "These are your designs," she said, eyes wide. She recognized her own work for the Sustainable Housing Project, but saw something new. "The Sterling Rivers Foundation," she read, her voice catching. "A place where we can help families and working parents everywhere," Damien said softly. "A legacy for our children. A place where we build not just homes, but a better future for families." Alara's eyes filled with tears. She hugged him. "It's perfect," she whispered. Damien smiled. "Just like our family." The babies started to show their growing personalities. Orion was trying to roll over. Serafina was reaching for her brothers. Kai watched everything carefully, his eyes full of thought. Later that day, their life changed even more. On the morning show Good Morning America, Selena Westbrook, Damien's ex-wife, came on to tell the truth about her past actions. She admitted that years ago she had made up stories about Damien's ability to have children. She apologized for the pain she caused and explained that instead of blaming Damien, she should have supported him. Seeing the success of Damien and Alara's new life, Selena said, "I see how much love you two have, how you've built something amazing for your family and others." She even offered to help with the Sterling Rivers Foundation, and Damien agreed, showing forgiveness. That evening, as they drove home, Alara whispered to Damien, "It was so kind of you to offer her a chance to help." "It feels right," he said softly. "Sometimes the people who have struggled most can help others the most." When they arrived home, they saw their babies playing on the soft mats, Orion trying again to roll over, Serafina singing, and Kai watching carefully. Look at my angels, Alara said, gathering Serafina in her arms while Damien picked up the boys. Alara's mom smiled. Sometimes the biggest acts of love are the ones that heal old wounds. Damien looked around at his family. He felt thankful for everything, the love, the support, and the chance to make a difference. He knew all the struggles had led him to this perfect moment. That night, as the babies slept, Damien and Alara stood by the window, looking at the lights in the city. Alara asked softly, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Selena had never made those accusations?" Damien shook his head. "No, because every part of the journey brought me to you, to our babies, and to this perfect life." At that moment, they heard soft baby sounds from the nursery, as if their children were agreeing. They had found their way to this moment of peace, forgiveness, and love. The next day, they hosted a special celebration in a beautiful ballroom. It was meant to be a simple christening for their babies, but it was so much more. The room was full of beautiful flowers, and a string quartet played. Orion, Serafina, and Kai wore special christening gowns made from Alara's wedding dress. Damien stood up to speak. 5 years ago, I stood in this room and thought I had everything, but I was wrong. I've never been more wrong. His eyes looked at Alara and their babies. Now I have everything. His words brought tears to everyone's eyes, showing just how much love and change had happened since those early, difficult days. As Damien stood in front of everyone, he began speaking to those who once believed lies about him, who spread rumors, and who doubted his worth as a man. He said, "I'm not here to get back at anyone. I'm here to offer forgiveness. All the hurtful words, all the painful moments led me to a special day when an amazing woman chased papers across my lobby." His voice shook a little as he looked at his wife, Alara. "My love, you didn't just change my life. You showed me what life could be. When the world felt dark, you brought light. When others thought I was weak, you saw my strength. When I lost faith in miracles, you gave me 3 perfect miracles." He smiled and pointed to his children. "Look at them," Damien continued, his voice full of pride. "These 3 precious souls, who doctors said might never be born, are here with us today. Our son Orion is already showing how strong he is, protecting his siblings even before he can crawl. Our daughter Serafina already sings with the music of her mother's soul. And our youngest, Kai, watches the world with wisdom beyond his years." Damien turned back to the crowd, his voice becoming stronger. "Some of you said I wasn't a real man. Some of you doubted I could create a legacy. But a true legacy isn't about big buildings or money. It's about the lives we touch, the love we share, and the miracles we create together." Tears flowed freely from the crowd, even from tough businessmen and society leaders who rarely showed their emotions. Damien looked down at his children with love. "I promise you a world where love has no limits, where dreams are endless, where miracles happen because of faith and hard work. You were made from love so strong that it beat the odds and the world's judgment. You are proof that love can grow even when hate tries to tear it down." Alara was crying too, her tears matching the ones of almost everyone in the room. "To those who doubted us, I forgive you," Damien said. "To those who helped and supported us, we thank you. And to anyone who has ever been judged, told their dreams were impossible, or made to feel small, look at my family. Look at these 3 miracles. Look at the woman who loved me even when I was broken and made me whole again." His voice became even more powerful. "This isn't just a christening. This is a celebration of love's ability to heal, to change, and to create miracles. These babies aren't just our children. They show us that love conquers all, that faith can move mountains, and that the greatest thing we can build is a life full of love and hope." The room was quiet. Only the sound of soft crying and the music of the string quartet could be heard. As the light from the setting sun filled the room with rainbow colors, Damien held baby Kai in his arms and continued, "Today, we name our children before God and everyone here. but they were named by love long before this. Orion, our strength. Seraphina, our song. Kai, our wisdom. Three hearts that prove that dreams really do come true. He paused, his voice full of emotion. And to anyone who ever thought I was broken, thank you. Because sometimes we have to be broken completely to be built back stronger. And I was rebuilt by love. I was made whole by faith, and I am blessed more than I ever imagined by these three precious gifts. Tears filled his eyes as he kissed each of his children's foreheads, then kissed Alara softly on the lips. The string quartet, also moved by the moment, played softly as the light of the afternoon filtered through the windows. The celebration went on for hours, but everyone would always remember the speech Damien gave. It became legendary, talked about for years, as people remembered how love turns scandal into something beautiful, and how three miracle babies showed that the most important thing in life isn't money or fame, but the power of love. Later that night, Damien and Alara stood on their penthouse terrace looking out at the city below, their babies peacefully sleeping in their arms. "I love you," Alara whispered. "All four of you, more than all the stars in the sky." "And we love you," Damien replied softly, like more than every grain of sand on every beach, more than every raindrop in every storm, more than every dream in every heart. The city stretched endlessly before them, but their greatest joy wasn't in the buildings or the lights. It was in their family, in their love, and in the truth that sometimes the greatest things in life aren't made of steel or glass. They're made of faith, forgiveness, and love. Thank you for watching. If you liked this story and want to see more, please subscribe to our channel. That way you won't miss any new videos. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and share what you think in the comments. We love hearing your thoughts. Also, don't forget to check out the other videos on our channel. We'll see you in the next story.